Hey, it's Rich, the Louisiana hobby guy. How many times do you see on the internet people saying, I'll put up a piece of work and say, look what I did today, and then you get 10 people right behind it saying, what are your settings? What are your settings? It doesn't matter what my settings are. What your settings are is what matters to you, not what my settings are that I use. So today we're talking about getting your settings right and the universal test card. Stay right there. All right, so here we are in Lightburn. I've got my universal test card loaded here. And this universal test card is available for free download on my forum in the members only section. It's a free forum, doesn't cost you anything to sign up. Uh, you just sign up once you become a member, you activate your account by email, you log into the forum, and there's a download section that's got all kinds of great stuff in there. I've got art galleries, I've got art libraries, I've got cut libraries, I've got file downloads, just a whole load of stuff. Plus, we have over 7,000 members now, and a lot of discussion going on about a lot of different topics and a lot of different lasers. And it's really an enjoyable place that's totally focused on hobbies. And it could be any hobby. It could be, laser engraving. It could be 3D printing. It could be any hobby at all. So there are a whole bunch of different sections there, and you can stick to the section that you like, the best. So I invite you all to come over there. You can get this universal test card for free. It's been in development for about 8 years, and it's changed quite a bit over the time. I think this is like version 5 or 6. I'm not sure which, but it's about to be changed slightly again, and it's always being changed for the better. So in here, I have the universal test card over here on the workbed, and then I have it broken down into pieces over here on the right side. Now these are off the workbed, so you don't have to worry about them burning. Lightburn's not going to send your laser off the workbed to go see these. So only what you have over here on the workbed is what's going to burn. Now, if I zoom in on this, this is my universal general test. And I may run this 2 or 3 times when I first get a laser so I can get an idea of how the laser performs. And I always use the same exact wood. I use 1.5 millimeter basswood. I run them all at 2,000 millimeters per minute, 100% power on the engraving, and I run the cuts at 100% power and 120. Now I'll show you why that doesn't always work out. Here is the test card for the laser that I'm testing right now, which is the longer Ray 5. Now you can see that it's definitely too much power for this laser. It's a 5-watt laser, but it did a really superb job on it. And if I look close at it, I can see that, well, I'm getting from 5% all the way to 95% on the engraving. So that's just fantastic. But you can see how badly burned this is over here, and there are big ridges here where it's deep into the wood. In fact, it's almost out the other side on the 190, 95, 90, all the way down. The ridges are all the way down to 65%. So I know right off the bat that I've got to change this. And instead of 2,000 millimeters per minute, I'm going to change this, run it again at 4,000 millimeters per minute. And the cuts, well, the cuts went all the way down to 1 millimeter, perfectly cut through, circle and square. And the reason that I do that, and the reason that I do the parabolic cuts, and the reason I do the flex cuts, is also that I can get an idea of what the minimum is, the minimum requirement to cut through a particular piece of material. Now, this is 1.5 millimeter basswood. Then I would do another one if I used regularly 3mm, or if I used 2mm regularly, or if I were using plywood. And for each different one, I would do a different test. And you keep these cards so that you know I'm getting out my 1.5mm basswood. You're not going to remember that, and actually you create libraries from this. So you create your own library that has all the different materials that you need, your own cut library, by running these test cards. And you'll never have to ask again on a discussion board or on a Facebook group, what are your settings? Because this is going to tell you what your settings are. And you run this on any material. You can run it on glass, you can run it on acrylic, you can run it on everything. So I'm going to take this test card for the long array 5. I'm going to rerun this, all right? And I'm going to pull out just this. You know what? I think the text came out pretty good. I think these lines up here came out pretty good. You know, it's just the image, and it's also the cut that went all the way through. I only want about half of these cuts to go through to get an accurate reading. So I know exactly, you know, where it needs to be and what size cuts I can do, how fine I can make them at what speed. So I don't want them all to go through so easily, in other words. It's kind of hard to explain. But I'm going to rerun these two tests, and I'm going to take it from there. So back over in Lightburn. So now I've done this full card test, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this test, and I'm going to pull it off to the side, even though I need to run, I don't know, maybe one or two more at least. But what I'm interested in now is this image over here. So I'm going to bring this image test in over here. I'm going to put it, maybe I'll put it like right about there. And I've got my RAFFLE laser for March, the long array 5. You can see it here. I've got that set up in the workshop next door. Interesting tidbit, in case you're curious, is that there's no wires running to this machine. Let me bring this window in and show you. This is the long array 5, and you can see I'm connected by a network connection here. And I just think, you know, this is really fabulous because you can do everything over the network. And I'll give you an example. So let's jump over to settings and look at this. Not only do you have all of your Gerbil settings in here, but you have a definition of what they are. So you have the parameter and the description. So all of your settings are in here. And I think this is really a very neat feature of this particular laser. You have the SD file, which is the card that's plugged into the laser right now. And this tells you what's on it. You can upload files to it. And a bunch of other stuff. And we'll just click on English. I think I already had it set to English. But there is like one or two things that are in Chinglish. Open light over here. That's pretty cute. Open light means fire the laser. Close light means to stop firing the laser. This is the speed that it moves at and the distance that it moves. So, you know, I have it set for 50 millimeters for each time I press this button. Just to give you an example, let me bring that camera out because this is in the shop next door in the wood shop. And let me make this a little bit bigger. And right over here, let me see if I can bring this up really large. Right over here is where the network cable plugs in. You notice it's not plugged in. So there's no network cable plugged into this. We're just doing this purely on my Wi-Fi network. So if I bring this back up, let me show you. And this laser has no homing switches, by the way. So let's go ahead and move it. Now you see it moving to the right. And let's move it up. And you see that it's instantaneous. I can do everything from inside this window on the network, which is really cool. I can even send it home. And you know, a lot of people have been talking about limit switches lately, And I guess that's because a couple of the more popular lasers are coming without them. For instance, you know, the Atom Stack and the X-Tool D1 and so on. And limit switches are totally unnecessary. You know, it's just a fluff feature that a lot of lasers have. Before you turn on this laser, all you do by hand is you move the laser head to the front left corner. It's homed. Turn it on and you're ready to work, and you can work in coordinates. Now you see where I have this right here. So let me bring this back out again and I'll show you. I have to actually save this now. So what I'm going to do is come over here to the laser, and I'm going to click over here where it says Save G-Code. So I'm going to click Save G-Code. I'm going to click Continue. And this is where I keep it. And I'm going to call this Test 2. This is on my local hard drive. And now I'm going to come back over to this window, being that we have no wires attached. And I'm going to click on Upload here. And I'm going to find Test 2 G-Code. Say Open. And we'll just wait for that to load it. And there we go. So now it's loaded. So now I can pull that camera back out and show you what I was about to do a minute ago. I'm sorry I make these videos long for no reason. Okay, so here we go. So now we're going to come down here and we're going to hit frame, and it's reading the file, and I'm ready to hit send. So I'll hit send. And now you'll see that it's going to come up. It's turned the laser on, and it's going to frame that particular job. You can see the laser is on. It's coming around, and it's framing it. And all you have to do is know your coordinates. You have to know where your piece is on that particular on your workbed. So I know where my coordinates are, and that's done. So what I'm going to do now, and let's move this back over here and get it out of the way, is I'm going to change this one. So what I'm going to do is come over to Cuts and Layers. I'm going to come, now I don't want to change the text because that was okay, all right? But what I want to change is the image. So I'm going to bring up the image, and I'm going to bump this up to, I'm going to say 3000 for the next test. Okay? And actually, I'm going to probably do 280 DPI, just below 0.1 line interval, which is good. I think that's good. So we're going to do that. And now I have to save this job again. And I think one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this smaller so that it runs a little more quickly. So now I have to save this file again. And I'm going to call this one test22 and hit save. All right, and then coming back to the web browser, I'm going to upload a file, test22, and there it is, test22. And I am going to just hit, well, let me pull this out so that you can watch it as we go. Let me make this bigger. And I'm going to hit start over here. Now you can see it's gone straight to work in the spot that I have it on my work plane. And I do have my my air scrubber over here, my portable air scrubber that you've probably seen in a couple videos before. I've had this on for about a year, and I'm going to be making some custom modifications, putting a HEPA filter and two charcoal filters. It works really well right now. It scrubs all of the smoke out of the air, but it doesn't necessarily get all the smell. So I think the HEPA filter and the custom case for it is going to make it just perfect. You know, I don't have smoke extraction in the wood shop, and I don't want to run it through my my vacuum system. So that's why I use this portable air scrubber here. So this is how you determine what your speed and power is supposed to be for different things, is by running a couple of basic tests. Then when you get it to the point where you say, hey, this is the test that I like, came out nice for this particular material, that's the one that you save. And, you know, put it in a Ziploc gallon bag or something like that, and just keep adding to that baggie with all of your different materials that you use. You put in a piece of acrylic that you've run the tests on that you're happy with, and this takes a little time and a little investment to get everything down and correct, but it's not a big deal if you do it a little bit at a time. And as you're doing it, you build your library as well, your cut library. So in the future, all you have to do, you say, oh, I have a piece of 1.5 millimeter basswood. I want to do a light engraving on it. You go over to your cut library because you've saved everything from these different test cards that you've done in your library, and you just click on that and assign it to the layer, and you're done. That's the beauty of the test card. And even though to some people it seems complicated, but it's really not. It's just a matter of changing your settings every time you run it. So now this is, you know, going to take a little while to run through. So I'm going to take a break here, and I'll come back with the final results, and we'll pick up right here where we left off. Okay, so I finished the test. I did forget one thing. I forgot to put a cutout around the outside of the circle to cut the piece out. So after that job finished, I did go ahead and put a circle around it and ran that at 140 speed and 100 power, and it still did a really fine job. So I'm going to have to test that again. But I haven't gotten to the cut test yet. So that, you know, that was just to cut this piece out to show you. So this is the result of the little tiny grayscale that I did. And you can see here that from 25% power up to 95% power, and I don't know if you can see it that well on the screen here, but there's a really fine, nice gradient between 25 and 95. So what does that tell me? And I did mark the back with the speed, 3,100. So what that tells me is that the 2,100 came out too dark. The 3,100, I didn't get the gradient that I wanted all the way down to 5%. And I want to get all the way down to 5%. I want to be able to get from 5% to 90 to 95%. And that I will know I'll have my proper speed, my proper setting for this particular wood to engrave, and to engrave really well. I'll get the whitest of whites and every shade in between. And don't forget, there are like, Lightburn can understand 16 shades of gray and more like 256 shades. So if you have a picture, a photograph, and you really want to get a great photograph, let's say you're doing the Norton white tile method, and you want to have the blacks really black and every shade in between to be shaded properly so that it looks like a photograph. Well, you're going to have to do something like this to dial in your laser. You know, you see the people online, they get such beautiful results, and you say, gee, I copied his settings, why didn't I get the same results? Well, because you don't have the same laser. And it doesn't matter if it's the same model, same power. Every laser is different. Every piece of wood is different. The wood in my shop has a different moisture density than the wood in your shop. I can promise you that. So, you know, there's so many different variables involved in this. If you don't do your own universal test card, your own image test, your own cutting test, you're not going to be successful at this and, you know, be really successful in the least amount of time. So now I know 3,000 is too fast because I didn't get down on the bottom of the scale as far as I wanted. Well, you've got some at 15, some at 20. 25 is where it starts to fill in. So I really wanted to get at least 10, 15 up from there. So what I'm going to do is instead of 3,000, I'm going to run it again. Now I've done 2,000, I've done 3,000. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, 2,500. And I'll run this same little mini one again. And that's the reason why I have all the pieces off to the side. So let's go back to Lightburn. And over here, you'll see that, let me zoom out a little bit. So now we start with the big card, and that gives us a good baseline to work from. Then we focus in on the image next. We create our image, and here you see I put that extra line around to cut it out. We create our image, and we, in this case, we had to increase the speed because this one was too dark. So we'll run this maybe 2 or 3 times until we get the perfect setting for this particular material. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll take this one off the workbed and we'll find something else. And the next thing I would want to do is the cut over here. So I would bring this over here like that, and I would redo this cut. Now, I know that I changed the numbers on my little test card, and 140 did just fine. 140, 100%. So what I'll do is I'll come over here, and we know the black is good. So we're not going to fool with the black. 2075 looks really nice for the vector letters. So only thing we want to concentrate on is this green right here. So I'm going to double click on the green, and I know I already changed it to 140 for the cut. That's not good enough. So I'm going to change this to 160 this time. And I'm going to say OK. So now I'm going to cut this piece out at 160. So let me save this real quick. I'm going to click Save G Code. I'm just going to call this one Cut 2 and hit Save. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to upload Cut 2. And here is Cut 2 right here. And let me move this off over here. I'll bring back the camera so that you can see this. There we go. And now I'm not going to frame or anything. I'm just going to send the job over there. So let's just send that job over and let it do the cut. Because I'm working on my work plane here. I know where the laser is going to go next. And that's why everybody, you know, they talk about laser origins and using absolute coordinates and everything. I just use, this is the way I always work, absolute coordinates. And then all I do is just position the material on the workbed at particular coordinates, and it does a fine job. So here we go, and I guess I'm just going to let this one run while we talk. And you know, all of these are designed so that you can get this done quickly. And yeah, your first big test card, you don't have to do a big 5x7 test card. You can shrink that test card down to whatever size you want. You know, you could shrink it down to, you know, whatever. You could do it within, let's say, 2.5. You know, instead of 5, shrink it down 50%, shrink it down 75%. You're still going to get the same results. It'll just be harder to see. And that's the reason why I like doing the big test card as my first initial test. Then that gives me a baseline from there of how I should change my settings for both the text, the lines, and the cutting. So now you can see it's cutting everything out. It's almost finished with the circles, I think. Yeah, it's the circles on that side. And I got to say, this laser did a superb job on the 1 millimeter circle and square. And the reason why I do circles and squares and parabolic cuts and the flex cuts is because I want to get an understanding of how the laser works in every XY position. So as it's traveling in X, as it's traveling in the Y coordinates, as it's traveling in the XY, the YX, I want to see how it performs in every different direction. And it's just about finished with this job now. So you see, I didn't shrink this one down at all because we're just cutting. We're cutting out. And I see them all dropping out. So even at these settings, it's still cutting all the way through 160, 100. And that's kind of surprising. I don't think I've had a 5-watt laser do that before. So I'm quite happy with that. And I'm just going to, finish testing this until I find out what it does. And that'll all be in the review. And this long array 5 is going to be March's giveaway. So there we go. It's done. I'm going to jump over into the other shop and I'll be right back. I'll go, I forgot to cut that one out. So I'm going to cut it out real quick. And then I'm going to run next door to the shop, get it, and come back. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, well, surprise, surprise. I did go ahead and cut that one out, and 160, 100, it's still, cut right through it like nothing. So I ran it again rather than stretch this video out any longer, 200, 100. And even at 200, 100, it ran it perfectly. And let me show you them side by side, the exact same cuts. If you can see this, the scorching on the edges is exactly the same, even at 200 millimeters. So I'm going to take a guess and say that this one's probably going to go to 300. I'm going to save you all that time, and I'm not going to keep running these. I'm just going to do a regular grid test, which those tests are also available in the forum as well. So if this doesn't work out and you don't hit it right on the first shot, well, then go ahead and run a grid. And that's the easiest thing to do. You've already got your baseline with these. You know what it can do. So you're going to work up from there. So I would start with the grid at 200 speed. 200, 300, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400 should be enough. And then just run the power from, say, 75 to 100, and you'll get a really good idea of what this can do at the best speed and power that you can find. And that's the whole purpose of the universal test card, is to give you an overview. And I hope this video is helping you out with that. So now let's recap, and let me try and summarize this to make it less complicated. So we're going to start with the universal test card. Now I do the 5x7 size. Scale it to whatever size you want. Up in the top corner, just scale it down by percentage. Scale it down by 50%, 75%, whatever you want. I wouldn't go much further than 75%. So run that first universal test card. That'll give you an idea of everything that it can do, from the text to the line drawings to the parabolic cut to the image mode, and then move on to the image, the grayscale, and take that image next and bring that image out onto your workpiece and run that image. And then you want to find the best gradient of grayscale that you can find. So you want it to be anywhere from 5 to 10%, all the way up to, say, 90 to 95%. When you get into that range where you see color, different color in every single square, from 5 or 10% all the way up to 90 or 95%, you're in the sweet spot. And now you've got your settings just right. It may take 2 or 3 of those. Again, you can scale down that grayscale image by 50%, which is what I did with the little one. So this little guy right here is scaled down by 50, or actually probably 60%. So that's the second step. Then you want to find out your cutting. So if you're making let's say a living hinge box, well, then you want to go back to your test card here, and you want to look at your flex cuts over here to find out which hinge is working the best for you. Okay? So, I mean, that's the beauty of the universal test card, is that you can use it in all different fashions, for all different materials, for all different uses. So we got lucky, and we hit our text right on the first try. We got our text just perfect. Now I will go back, and if I were to build a library for this, I would go back and do at least three different settings on the text. And the reason for that is, in my libraries that I have on my personal machine, I like to have, like for instance, text engrave, light text engrave, medium text engrave, dark text engrave. So I'll do at least three different ones, sometimes 4 or 5, so I can find out which works the best on this particular material. And yeah, you're going to burn up a whole piece, a whole piece of 8 by 12, for instance, what I'm using here, basswood. I'll burn up the whole piece doing this. But, what is that? 50 cents? It's not a big deal. It's just the time that it takes to do it, and the effort. And if you want to stop being that person on Facebook that says, what's your speed and power? I mean, come on. Nobody can tell you what your speed and power is going to be. That's something that you have to invest into the hobby. You have to invest your time into the hobby and a little bit of material. And if you do this, I promise you that you can get superb results on whatever it is that you decide to do. Any piece that you want to do, whether it's engraving the back of a mirror, whether it's the Norton white tile method, whether it's engraving wood or acrylic or any other material, leather, cardboard, doesn't matter what it is. You can get the best engravings and cuts if you just take a little bit of time and learn how to use this universal test card. And I know my tutorials get a little lengthy, and as always, but I guess you're all used to that by now. And the reason that it's lengthy is because I want to try and explain all of these things the best that I can, and I could never verbalize that in just one go. It takes me 2 or 3 goes to do it. So that's the reason why this always takes so long. But I hope the summary helped you out here, because the one thing that we all want to do is we want to create works of art. And we don't just want to create something that just because, hey, look, I burned this on a piece of wood and it looks like crap, to be honest. And a lot of them do look that way. You don't want yours looking that way. So don't do it. Download my universal test card, run all of these tests on all the different materials, come over onto my forum and get it. And then after you've gotten it, and after you've run your tests, and after you've made your first masterpiece, come over to the section of the forum that says show off your work and show it to me, because I'd love to see it. And I'd love to know that you went from just basic engraving to artwork because you watched this video. So, as always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.